But you were telling me about your drone. So are you using that for, is that like a new tool to record the racing, or what is that for? You never told me.
Yeah, that's for my new YouTube channel, IT and Motorsports.
Okay.
The the core mission is to explore how IT businesses utilize motorsport marketing and how motorsport teams utilize IT when they go racing.
Hmm.
And the sub series that I specifically bought the drone for was a series called Channel Cars,
Hmm.
inspired by. Uh, you're familiar with the Tech Tribe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So inspired by one of the perennial posts on the Tech Tribe about what car do you drive, I thought it'd be really interesting to find out what petrol heads and car enthusiasts were throughout the channel, and almost Top Gear-esque. That there'll be a series of a light interview with a key member of the channel, an MSP owner, a vendor, whomever, talking us around their car, what they like, what they don't like, what about their car history, what's next for them, and so yeah, the drone was for capturing footage of those vehicles as part of that series. Although I might use it for the motorsport, the main motorsport one as well.
Okay, cool. So how many of these interviews have you done so far?
Well, I've only recorded two so far.
Okay.
I've got six ready to record, and I think I'm on video 9 so far on my channel. So it's like really early days.
Okay, I'm just like curious because this is something they always do on Top Gear. What kind of cars do they drive? These two guests that you've had so far.
Oh well, I'll guess thus far that the first episode is Adam and I from the MSP Finance Team edition, which is going to be entitled Three Shades of Grey. So we've got a Tesla, Tony the Tesla, we've got Luigi the Arbath, and Francesca the Ferrari.
Okay.
And then we have another grey car in our second episode, which is a Hyundai Ioniq 5. Which is also it's like a greeny grey. So that's what we've got so far. But lined up, we've got a Ferrari 488, a Rolls Royce, some fast forwards RS cars. We've
Hmm.
got some BMW M cars.
Cool.
Interesting. And I know there's some Lamborghinis out there as well. So I'm hoping I'll be able to convince
What
a
couple of
Lamborghini owner to come on.
That's very cool. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. It sounds terrific. All right. So, what I want to do today is something I call 12 questions for experts. It's
Mhm.
basically a session that's been built around these 12 questions around cybersecurity. It's topics that I've picked out where I've noticed that people that have been in this MSP and cybersecurity space for a long time have vastly different opinions about what's the right way of doing things, let's say.
Mhm.
And so I've put together these questions where it's always a multiple choice. You always have either yes or no or ABC options, and you got to pick one. And the way we'll do this is I'll always give you the options, and you got to basically pick one of the options that you would prioritize, that you think is the most important, let's say, and explain your reasoning behind it, right? And the whole idea is I want to make sure we kind of, you know, actually get to the bottom of why are we having all these different opinions about things. What we're going to be doing, by the way, is we're going to be posting, or we're going to be doing like a part of our website that's going to have like statistics about what different people answer and what sort of, where there's more alignment, let's say, and where there's obviously less alignment, and where there's maybe more need to focus on thinking about cybersecurity strategy. Or maybe, you know what, maybe sometimes it'll be a reflection for us to say, hey, listen, like maybe you're just not asking the question the right way or something like that. We'll
Mhm.
see, right? um, but anyway, so that's sort of the format. Before we go into that, could you maybe, because you did talk a little bit about your show, but could you maybe just say a bit about what it is that you do in your core business? What is sort of the value that you're providing in this space and why you're doing it?
So, along with my business partner Adam, we run the MSP Finance Team, whose core mission is to help MSP owners become happier and wealthier. Both Adam and I are former MSP owners, and we currently work one to one with our clients, coaching, mentoring, advisory, therapy, call it what you will, and we also offer scaled financial management services around bookkeeping, management accounts, FD, CFO as a service, ultimately helping our clients grow their businesses and, most importantly, make them as profitable and as successful as they can be for their owners' objectives.
All right, thank you. So we went through the concept. I do have one sort of testing question that I always start with.
Hmm.
just to make sure. I like to do POCs, so I want to
Okay.
make sure we're actually on the same page when it comes to the concept. So the question that I ask is, if you had to pick between watching a full UFC fight or a game of cricket, which one would you pick?
Wow. Okay. I'd probably go with cricket, only because Adam would pick cricket. I'm probably not fussed about either, to be honest.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, anyway, you've passed the test.
Okay, good.
Good enough of an answer. All right. So let's get into the questions, shall we?
Mhm.
So the first one is about BYOD policy and something that's sort of a common fundamental strategy, which is managing devices. Talking to different cyber professionals across the board, I usually get different opinions about this. The question is, if you had to pick between having a robust BYOD policy or having a managed devices only policy for a particular organization, which approach would you suggest or would you say is the better one in your opinion?
I only have to pick one, right?
Yeah.
Or I can't pick both for rationale.
Well, I mean, if okay, let's say you pick one, and then if you have something that you feel like
Then I
there's,
can give an answer.
you can give it an answer for sure. Yeah,
Okay,
that's why we have the explanation part, right? Because it's not about like
got it.
it's not about cornering you. It's about
Yeah,
like giving you the space to explain what your rationale behind it is, right? So
fine. Okay. Yes. So yeah, for me, it would be bring your own device if I had to choose,
Mhm.
and I think that's predominantly because the majority of my experience is within the SME sector. And I think if you went to a large corporate enterprise, absolutely you'd expect to use a mandated device, but it's just not practical within SME land, I don't think.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. The other question is talking to cybersecurity people, especially when you ask them, okay, so what are the fundamentals, right? They always tell you the same thing. They tell you cybersecurity is about three things. It's about
Mhm.
people, process, and technology. Now, if we're thinking about the SME space, where do you think, let's say, maybe this can be two questions. First, where do you think SMEs lack the most out of these three? And subsequently, where do you, if you were to give them advice, which out of these three they should spend the most energy on?
Yeah, really interesting question. If you've got to pick one of three, as you say, they're all equally important. Probably for the SME, I'd say it would be people in terms of making the people aware of what the risks are and just what an impact their behaviour can have in providing cybersecurity. That's not to say that you would only ever do that, but I think it would be the people focusing. One of the big things SMEs say is I'm not going to be targeted because why would anyone be interested in me? And of course the counter argument is you go to the least protected victim for the best chance if you're a bad actor. So therefore, yeah, it's got to be people.
All right. Have you ever had the experience that, as a former MSP owner, right? Have you ever had the experience that your clients expected that you sort of had their back when it comes to cybersecurity, when in fact what you were providing is sort of the traditional MSP services? Could you maybe, I guess, maybe before we go into the question, could you maybe tell me a little bit about, as an MSP, where was cybersecurity part of your core offering, or was that something that was sort of not your main forte?
Yeah, interesting topic actually, because my experience is that cybersecurity has always been a part of the MSP offering, and even before when you called it
Hmm.
IT support services, it was natural to be focused around permissions to the data, to having antivirus, firewalls. So security's been a natural part of what I think the MSP does from as far back as I can recall, to be honest. And I started in the mid 90s, and therefore definitely it is it's to be expected that the MSP is going to be responsible for educating the client around risks and helping them choose the right strategy for them.
Well, the reason why I asked the question is because a lot of MSPs don't actually see themselves that way, right? A lot of the times MSPs, well, sometimes they put it in the contract. Well, there's different layers to this, right? There's the ownership of the risk,
Mhm.
I guess, is the one part. And then there's the services part as well. Because the problem with all of this that we're facing as an industry is still customers don't really understand what cybersecurity is, right? Especially in the SME space. I guess this is very different than an enterprise segment, but in the SME space, there isn't really a good understanding. And then sometimes there's a disconnect and a mismatch of expectations as to who's doing what sort of a thing, right? Where is but it is a hard topic because naturally, as you're saying, it's always been a part of it to an extent. It's like, well, if you're doing antivirus, like why are you doing that, right? Like it's been that way, and it's been a naturally a part of the offering. But then if you look at the risk side of things, a lot of MSPs will tell you, well, we're not actually doing that, right? We're not actually doing cybersecurity. Is cybersecurity services and cybersecurity consultancy isn't actually part of what we're doing for you. So
And certainly I would expect the onus to be on the MSP to educate the client as to what is and isn't included, and the client can then make a decision about how much they want to spend. Cybersecurity, whether it's consulting or a service, there's a budget associated to it, and ultimately the client's got to be prepared to make an investment, and they're going to spend money on what's most important to them, or what they're most educated about, and therefore it's if the MSP has not said you could um, you should consider doing X, Y, Z, then they are then at risk of not being able to defend themselves in the event of the client having an issue.
right, right. This is a totally random question that just like, hearing you talk about cybersecurity and talking about how that's always contextual. It's always there's always different things to worry about depending on what your business is, right? And I'm just thinking about motorsports and just sort of your focus, and the type of people that you do business with and that you meet with, on a daily basis. In motorsports, what do you think, or from your experience, what are the prominent risks and the stuff that they have to worry about and they need to focus on a, I don't know, probably, during races or when preparing for races and that sort of thing? What are the things that they need to worry about?
Well, I'm hoping to discover more about this in the journey of my new podcast, the YouTube channel, IT and Motorsport, of course. Excuse the shameless plug. But yeah, the motorsport teams are producers of vast amounts of data.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be able to analyze that data as quickly as possible to gain the competitive advantage, in the same way as a lot of businesses and commercial entities do also, and layer that on top of the fact that there are global logistic challenges in some motorsport series. The time to respond is immediate. You're in a race. You have to be able to analyze and respond immediately, whereas there are also great periods of time where you can't respond and you're reflecting back on historical events perhaps. So yeah, motorsport's a great producer of data, and of course they want to secure it in the same way as any commercial entity does, because they don't want their competitors knowing what they know and gaining the insights that they can gain, which gives them
Right.
competitive advantage. So
Interesting.
yeah, motorsports is a great reflection of regular business.
Nice. Okay. Interesting. Thinking about priorities, come back to the sort of SME space, let's say. What do you think organization organizations that are just starting to take cybersecurity seriously, what should they master first? Should it be prevention or response?
Yeah, your questions are really thought provoking. Like you've done this before, I feel. Yeah, I would say again from an MSP's perspective, it should probably be prevention rather than response, and it's the lesser of the two evils. I would say probably a lot of MSPs. Sorry, I'll start again. Probably a lot of SMEs wouldn't be able to respond. They may not even know that they've had an issue, which of course is in itself a challenge. But yeah, I think step one has to be to try and protect themselves before being able to respond. Of course, we know it's not when, but yeah, I think if you've got to choose one, you've got to try and protect yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Now, on this note, would you say, I mean, you did touch on this a little bit, but would you say, sort of the first steps in improving the way a company is able to defend itself, would you say education is more appropriate as a measure of defending the organization, or is it more about technology?
Again, it's probably going back to that people educating users to how they should exercise caution. Again, really tough decision to make if you can only do one or the other. But yeah, I'd say it's probably about educating the people. That's where the key impact, I think, can be made, because once people are educated, there'll be this upward pressure in terms of wanting to consume technology and process and make budgets available for it. Until that education is achieved, the technology will always hit that buffer.
Now, zooming into a specific sort of topic that's very relevant these days when it comes to cybersecurity threats and what's on the mind for a lot of companies and for a lot of cyber professionals as well. It's ransomware. Do you think that if we're looking at it from more the technical point of view, do you think that ransomware, or to protect oneself or a company from a ransomware event, is it better to use existing tech that's available and has been available for on the market for let's say a decade or something like that? Is it more about using that tech right, or do you think that there's just some innovation that needs to happen in the tech space that we're still not there yet from a technological perspective? The reason why I ask, just to give you a little bit of context, is over the last 7 or 8 years, we've been seeing a dramatic increase in the volume of successful ransomware attacks, right? It's moved from, well, there's a lot of different data sources. I like the big ones because there's a lot of, like, statistically, they're significant, right? The Verizon report that's published on a yearly basis, I think, is a good representation of what's actually happening, especially in the sort of mid-size or SME space as well. And one thing that we've been seeing is that in the last 8 years, it's moved from about 1% of the recorded breaches has been ransomware about 8 years ago, and today it's about 25% or something like that. Breaches have had ransomware as a technique that was used along, let's say, as one of the technical steps that was taken by the adversaries, right? And all of this is only underlined by the fact that the total number of the data set is increasing, right? The total number of, I mean, there's two things happening. The total number of events has been increasing, right? And the second thing is also our recording capability has been getting better at the same time, because it's just been a more prevalent topic. So those two things are happening at the same time. Nevertheless, the result is it's rising, right? So that's just sort of to give you a little bit of background behind the question.
Yeah, and agree with your interpretation of the reasons that there's a higher volume, but there's also a higher volume of recording and overall knowledge, as goes along with the general education of the marketplace. So, to answer your specific question, more innovation or implement the tech we've got. I think it's got to be implement the tech we've got, because there will always be innovation on both the good and evil. So I do feel like there's the general level of protection is quite low, especially in the SME market. So maybe less so in the mid and enterprise. So I think for SMEs, certainly the focus should be on the basics and implementing tech we've got. And alongside that, the more sophisticated protections will naturally come down in price with more adoption and commoditization. And we're seeing that today in the prevalence or affordability of SOC based services. And yeah, so I think SMEs, baby steps, educate the people, that will increase the awareness for, and therefore the demand for, the technical solutions, and they can become more and more innovative over time.
Now, in case there is a ransomware event, should the organization pay or not?
They should not pay.
Why?
It will only make the problem worse. If nobody paid, there'd be no ransomware, right? However, if people are unable to recover from that event without the payment, then you can understand them paying. So yeah, it has to be, you shouldn't pay, but there will be circumstances where people do.
Right. Yep. Okay, this next question is, I think I need to rephrase it, so bear with me there. The question is, in case you have an MSP client relationship where the MSP is advising the client regarding cybersecurity, and the client is doing what they're supposed to be doing based on the MSP's advice, and in case there is uh, a ransom event, who should bear, or just in case of a breach, it doesn't matter what kind of a breach it is, who should bear the cost of the breach is the question. Should it be the client? Should it be the organization that's been hit? Or should it be the MSP?
Interesting. I think in reality, no MSP is providing 100% guarantee of protection. And in theory, the more advice the clients adopt, the higher their spend, the more protected the client should be. So all things being equal, it should be the client that bears the responsibility. The one caveat to that would be, is the MSP at fault for something that they have not done correctly? Therefore, perhaps you get into regular professional indemnity as a topic rather than cybersecurity. But yeah, generally this should be with the client. The MSP is not assuming the risk, and if they were to assume that risk, their price would have to be very much more to accommodate that risk that they're taking on, either whether they're onward insuring it or taking the risk themselves. So therefore, the client, again, it comes down to how much money the client wants to wants to put to it, and whether anyone would be open for accepting that bet to assume full responsibility. But no, it stays with the client. The client needs to be aware of that. That's a fundamental of what they're buying into.
Okay, I want to jump to sort of the more technical or detailed side of things. A topic that's very close to what I do: password policies. How frequently should passwords be changed, in your opinion, to ensure maximum security?
Yeah, tricky one. I think this probably is something that is going to be age dependent, in terms of how a user, um, what a user's preference is, and also what technology they've got. Password managers, for example, today mean that you can have much better control over your passwords than perhaps you had in the past. I can remember writing down my passwords in a notebook originally, and of course that then led to having fewer passwords and reuse, which of course became a problem. But yeah, ultimately we're moving towards not having passwords at all. So yeah, that's the direction of travel, I guess. But yeah, I would say probably, if I've got to pick an answer, I would say you probably shouldn't be changing your passwords regularly, because you shouldn't be having passwords in the future.
All right. You know what? I'm going to skip this next question because I feel like you did sort of answer it in one of the questions before. I do have two more questions that I want to ask you about, which are more about trends and maybe buzzwords a little bit.
Okay.
The first one is zero trust.
Okay.
Zero trust architecture has been one of the top topics in cybersecurity for the last few years. Now, in your mind, do you see this as when you hear the phrase zero trust networking security or zero trust network architecture today, is it to you more a buzzword, or do you see it as a truly important and innovative strategy for the networking security space?
Yeah, I think it's a real strategy now that it is possible, whereas historically perhaps it was, perhaps it wasn't as possible. Well, in fact, if I take it back to one of showing my age now, sort of the early conversations about investing in firewalls, it was, well, if you want a 100% solution, don't be connected to the internet. And of course was zero trust
Right.
in its full, or was it, because you still had users that could
Right.
cause mischief, of course. But yeah, I think no, I think it's a solid strategy, and certainly the MSP space has embraced zero trust, where tools and technologies enable an MSP to manage that across their estate. So no, definitely, definitely.
So another thing that's a huge topic right now, especially last year, is AI in cybersecurity. Now, we could talk about what AI is, because it's being thrown around so much that it's sort of a. But if we take it as an encompassing term for a lot of the innovation that's being done in the within automation and machine learning, and applying some of the methods that help basically achieve better automated decision making, right? Do you see AI when it comes to cybersecurity? Do you see AI more of a force for good, or do you think you see more dangers in AI when it comes to cybersecurity?
I think it's probably neutral insofar as the good and the bad actors can employ AI. So if anything, it's an equal accelerant, akin to most competitive advantage topics. Yes, everyone can use it, but will everybody? And so yeah, I don't see it as I don't see it as a fundamental force for good or bad. I think it's either side can use it to their advantage.
Mhm. Okay. Final thoughts. If you were to give a piece of advice for SMEs, there's one thing you'd like to tell them when it comes to cybersecurity, what they should focus on, how they should think about cybersecurity. What would that be?
If I'm talking directly to an SME right now, I'd say ask your MSP about cybersecurity and give them plenty of time to help you understand what the landscape looks like, what the options are. That there isn't a pill you can take to make this go away, and you've got to put the work in alongside the MSP.
All right. Well, thank you, Daniel, for joining me today. It was great having you. I'm going to be doing more sessions on different topics around cybersecurity. I guess next time, what I'm thinking about is doing something more open. These questions are really to get the ideas out, especially for the end customers and for the organizations that don't really know cybersecurity, to kind of hear a different perspective on things. But it's always good to talk about cybersecurity more of a broader context, considering the business realities and looking at it just as another problem that businesses have to face.
Mm-hmm.
So if you'd be open, I'd be happy to have you on another call because you have plenty of experience in this space, and it'd be great to hear you tell us a little bit more about what else is going on in the cybersecurity space, and when it comes to MSPs and when it comes to SMEs.
I'd be happy to, and to represent the SME consumer, providing that challenge. There's an issue there in how MSPs educate their clients. So that's a big cornerstone to not necessarily solving this topic, but certainly to making big advances.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you again, and I'll see you later.
Pleasure. Thank you.